Krishna kirtan ganana tan param prema.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Prabhupada Disciples Association Sunday morning Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam class. Nasta prayeshu abradeshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttamashlokir bhakti bhavati naishtaki. This was a verse that we always repeated before the classes back in the 70s to remind us that the process of sadhana bhakti begins with hearing. And like the great recitation of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam between the sages of Naimisharanya, Sutta Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit, this was a lesson for all of us on how to conduct ourselves in spiritual life. It's a sadhana program that we're creating weekly for our membership in the hope that everyone appreciates this with the right attitude. Attitude is very important in terms of what you do. There are three important things in what you do: your attitude, your motivation, why, and your commitment. These things will enable a person with the right attitude, the right motivation, and commitment to make advancement in spiritual life. And that is described by Lord Chaitanya in his Sikshastakam prayers most concisely. Humble, in a humble state of mind, one approaches the community of devotees and engages in devotional service with the motivation to please them and to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. And Prabhupada set that perfect example in his own life, and his commitment is unparalleled in the history of modern man. How he was so determined to spread Krishna consciousness after arriving in New York. And he demonstrated it by his daily behavior. Okay? People are so much caught up in material life these days, they don't look at themselves and how they conduct themselves each and every day with each and every person. This is very important. And the example given by Lord Chaitanya in his Sikshastakam prayers, Trinadapi Sunichena Tororapi Sahishnuna Amanina Amanadena Kirtaniya Sadahari. This state of consciousness, of motivation, will provide the commitment that is necessary to make advancement. Commitment. In other words, you show up. You never, ever give your word and you don't fulfill it. This is very important that everyone understand that. We're a mission here, a mission of commitment and to working together with like-minded devotees who are blessed with this understanding. So yesterday's class was just marvelous. Yasoda's presentation and the purports and understanding how vast this material creation is, how long it's been operating, and how insignificant we all are. We're insignificant. We're like little specks in the universe. It may be hard for people to listen to this because they're thinking, well, I'm so intelligent, I'm so rich, I'm so famous. But in the end, everyone must die. So Prabhupada exemplified that in his commitment to his spiritual master. And we've been enjoying this reading of his personal diary, which is a real insight. I know that all of our members are enjoying this reading so much, even though it seems somewhat, petty, because Prabhupada is mentioning about how much money he spent every day. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but it shows his attitude towards Lakshmi Devi and his respect for whatever he's been given and how he uses it so meticulously in Krishna's service. At the end of this diary here, I was looking through it yesterday, and I'll just show you here. I took accounting at university as well. I'm not a master accountant, but any stretch of it. But look at this. Can you see that, Venkat? Look at this.
Yeah.
Prabhupada doing a monthly income and expense statements. Brilliant. Just love that. And in handwriting, perfect handwriting. The kind of training he received in India at his schooling is remarkable. And you see what he's doing with this training. He's applying it in Krishna's service. So we'll look at these monthly reports later as we read along, but to see someone like this practically applying himself to devotional service, this is real commitment. Not talk, like the babbling of the brook. People just babble on. I was speaking to our godbrother Venkat yesterday on the phone. I'm constantly around people babbling in my ear. You have to tolerate them, especially your friends. But the fact of the matter is, it is just useless conversation in the scope of eternal time. And here Prabhupada is demonstrating how to effectively use your time. So we'll go to Venkat Prabhu. If you could just go down to the yesterday's page there, March highlights, and we'll start with letters and contacts, just at the bottom there on the right-hand corner. Keep going, down, there, to the right there. Because we did read the other section there. I stopped at classes and kirtan. So you see Prabhupada divided his workday into 3: books, book distribution, classes and kirtans, and letters and contacts. So you can use your own organizer to do the same thing. Vijay Pandit. Do the same thing. Books, what books you're distributing, what the plans are, what you're attending these classes, and then you can organize your own programs. And then letters and contacts, what you're going to do to reach out to people at libraries and different places like that to influence them to take up Krishna consciousness. So here we go. I saw Indian office for extension of passport. I saw Mr. L.L. Malhotra, saw Mr. Bogart, letter from Secretary of Indian Prime Minister. Wow. Disappointing letter from Universal Book, not encouraging. 2, saw Mr. L.L. Malhotra for renewal of passport, referred to New Delhi for confirmation to be returned at least 1 more year. Letter to Chandrasekhar, so go to the next page, please. That's 43. I sent that if you have it. Perfect. Thank you very much. Letter to Chandrasekhar to help expedite passport. He's thinking ahead. He's concerned how he's going to be able to keep up his work, his service. Letter to Boyd Compton of Rockefeller Foundation asking him exchange cooperation. So he's planning to get money and he's looking for some help. On the 5th, letter to the Secretary of Salvation Army, 14th Street West for exchange. On the 8th, one letter received from Atma Singh, Jara Singh, not willing to hand over Seva Puja to Goshain, nor build a temple in New York. Larry Bogart contacted, and Robert brought some fruits and dal. I've already, in the previous classes, I read ahead to the 8th because it was referred to, but we'll read it again as we move forward. On the 9th, went to see the Nepalese ambassador, but he was not present, so I left. He was rejected. Saw Larry Bogart. 10, letter from Vrindavan, India, letter from Library Bureau. 11th, a letter to Tirtha Maharaj in reply to his letter of 22 to February 22nd, 66. So Tirtha Maharaj is one of his godbrothers. Letter sent to Mrs. Sally Agarwal in reply to her letter 6366. So that's March 6, 66. And she's handling books for him in Butler, Pennsylvania. On the 14th, letter from Chandrasekhar. He will take some time to renew the passport. The visa renewed up to June 30th, 1966. So Prabhupada's being totally focused on maintaining his legal status in America. He wants to carry on. 17th, letter from Salvation Army Finance Secretary. At once went to see him. He is favorable by the grace of the Lord and has agreed to accept a $4 exchange. He is writing for confirmation. On the 18th, letter from Chandrasekhar. He encourages to stay in America for at least 3 years. God bless him. He reports some good sales of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Letter to Padampat Singhayani and to Srimati Sumuti Marajji. As you Prabhus know, I had a personal meeting with her when I was in Bombay at the opening of the temple there. She saw me in the group when we were with Prabhupada and asked me to visit her estate at Juhu Beach, one of her houses, and she interviewed me for 20 minutes. So it was a great experience for me. 21, one invitation through Dr. Mishra received for attending lectures of Indira Gandhi on the 1st of April. If somebody takes me, then I shall go. 22, letter from Mayor's Office, New York City. Very big thinker here. Universal thinker, and one for the United States Navigation regarding the Jaladuta. Letter sent to United States Navigation. 23, letter to Mayor's Office, informed that I shall wait to see Mr. Lindsay till he is free to talk with me. Letter to Library of Congress for the library card number of my Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. 24, SS Jaladuta is in New York Port. Could not contact Mr. Forrester by phone. Message left for Captain Pandya. Captain and Mrs. Pandya came to see me. I instructed them to contact Srimati Maharajji about my letters. 25th. Letter from Vrindavan Chandra De Calcutta. 28th. Letter from Tirtha Maharaj meeting with landlord. Letter from Tirtha Maharaj in a meeting with my landlord. The 30, letter from Rockefeller Foundation denying any help for starting the International Institution for God Consciousness. So they're still working on the name. 30 days notice served to S.N. Pletcher's landlord registered letter. On Tuesday, March 1st, here we go, saw the Indian Office for Extension of Passport and saw Mr. L.L. Malhotra, saw also Mr. Bogart, still hopeful. Received letter from Secretary of Prime Minister, disappointing. Received letter from Universal Book, not encouraging. And butter and bus fare, etc. Expenditure, 50 cents. And income, 15 cents. All glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda. All glories to his mission to bring Krishna consciousness to the material world. Vinkat Prabhu, please play the Jaya Radha Madhava Bhajan, and then we'll have Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu grace us with his reading and explanation of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam this Sunday morning. All glories to Śrīla
Jaya
Prabhupada.
Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Yaśodā-nandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yaśodā-nandana Bhajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Banachari. Jamuna Tira Banachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yaśodā-nandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yaśodā-nandana Bhajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Banachari. Jamuna Tira Banachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Amaspat Paramahansa Parivrajaga-Acārya Sattva Small Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava ki Jai, Nāma-Acārya Śrīla Haridas Thakur ki Jai, Prem se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Śrīvāsari Gaur Bhaktamani ki Jai, Sri Radha Krishna Mokh Gopinath Sam Khund Radha Khund Giri Godhan ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham ki Jai, Navadvip Dham ki Jai, Ganga Mai ki Jai, Jamuna Mai ki Jai, Guru Dwarka Dham ki Jai, Swami Bhaktivedanta ki Jai. All glories to the Assembly. All glories to the Assembly. Thank you very much.
All glories to you, Śrīla Prabhupāda. Glories to you, Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya. Narayanam Namaskritya. Naram Cheva Narottamam. Naram Cheva Narottamam. Devim Saraswatim Vyasam. Devim Saraswatim Vyasam. Tato Jayam Mudirayat. Tato Jayam Mudirayat. One should utter the means of conquest, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, after offering respectful obeisances, 1. To the personality of Godhead Narayana, 2. To the Narayana Rishi, who is the supermost human being, 3. To the Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, then 4. To Śrīla Vyasadeva, the author. Canto 1, Chapter 2, text number 17. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Svakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Ridyantasto Yabadrani Vidunoti Surit Satam. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is also the Paramatma in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, does cleanse the desire for material enjoyment in the heart of the devotee, who has developed the urge for hearing his, Krishna's messages, which are themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Text 18. Nashta prayeshu vabhadrishu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in the Bhagavatam class, or rendering service unto the pure devotees, all that is inauspicious in the heart of a candidate becomes destroyed almost to nil, and thus loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, comes into being an irrevocable fact. Welcome everyone to this reading and discussion on Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. We are reading from the original 1962 version, the New Delhi edition. Today we'll be reading from Canto 1, Chapter 2, text number 27 and 28. All English synonyms, translations, and purport from His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda, Founder-Ācārya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, also known as the Krishna Consciousness Movement. Rajastama prakritayaha samashila bhajanti vai pitribhuta prajeshadin shriyeshvarya prajayipshabaha. Rajas, the mode of passion. Tamaha, the mode of ignorance, prakritayaha, of that mentality, samashila, of the same categories, bhajanti, do worship, vai, actually, pitri, the forefathers, bhuta, other living beings, prajeshadin, controller of the cosmic administration, shriyaha, enrichment, aishvarya, wealth and power, praja, aristocracy, ishabaha, so desiring. Translation by Śrīla Prabhupāda. Those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance, and persons of the same category, do worship the forms of forefathers, other living beings, and the deities of the cosmic administration, urged by a desire to be materially benefited with women, wealth, and aristocracy. Purport. There is no need of worshiping demigods of whatsoever category for those who are serious about going back to Godhead. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly said that those who are mad after material enjoyment, they only approach the different demigods for temporary benefit, which are meant for men with a poor fund of knowledge. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 20 through 23. We should never desire to increase the depth of material enjoyment. Material enjoyment should be accepted only up to the point of bare necessities of life, and not more or less than that. To accept more material enjoyment means to bind up oneself more and more in the miseries of the material existence. More wealth, more women, and false aristocracy are some of the demands of the materially disposed man, because he has no information of the benefit derived out of Vishnu worship. By Vishnu worship, one can derive benefit for this life, as well as for the life after death. Forgetting these principles, foolish people who are after more wealth, more wives, and more children do worship the demigods of different dimensions. The aim of life is just to end the miseries of life and not to increase them. For material enjoyment, there is no need of approaching the demigods, because the demigods are but servants of the Lord. As such, they are duty-bound to supply necessaries of life in the form of water, light, air, etc., which are essential parts of the living conditions. One should work hard and worship the Supreme Lord by the fruits of one's hard labor for existence, and that should be the motto of life. One should be careful about his occupational service with faith in God in the proper way, and that would lead one gradually on the progressive march back to Godhead. Lord Sri Krishna, when he was personally present at Brajadam, he stopped the worship of Indra demigod and advised the residents of Braja to worship their business and to have faith in God. Worshipping the multi-demigods for material gain is practically a perversity of religion. This sort of religious activities have been condemned in the very beginning of Bhagavat as Kaitava Dharma. There is only one religion in the world to be followed by one and all, and that is the Bhagavad Dharma, or the religion which teaches to worship the personality of Godhead and no one else. Vasudeva Paraveda Vasudeva Paramakaha Vasudeva Parayoga Vasudeva Parakriyaha Vasudeva Param Jnanam Vasudeva Param Tapaha Vasudeva Parodharamo Vasudeva Paragatihi Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead. Para, ultimate goal. Veda, revealed scriptures. Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead. Para, for worshiping. Maka, sacrifices. Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead. Para, the means of attaining. Yoga, mystic paraphernalia. Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead. Para, under his control. Kriyaha, fruitive activities. Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead. Param, the supreme. Jnanam, knowledge. Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead. Param, best. Tapaha, austerity. Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead. Paro, superior quality. Dharma, religiosity. Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead. Para, ultimate. Gatihi, goal of life. Translation. The ultimate knowable object in the revealed scriptures is Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. The purpose of performing sacrifices is to please him. The mystic paraphernalia are performed for realizing Sri Krishna. All fruitive activities are ultimately rewarded by him only. He is the supreme knowledge, and all severe austerities are performed to know him. Religion means to do devotional service unto him, and he is the supreme goal of life. Purport by Śrīla Prabhupāda. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, is the only object of worship, is confirmed in these two slokas. In the Vedic literature, there is the same objective of establishing relation with Vasudeva, to act according to that established relation, and ultimately revive our lost loving service unto him. That is the sum and substance of the Vedas. In the Bhagavad Gita, the same theory is confirmed by the Lord in his own words, that the ultimate purpose of the Vedas is to know him only. All the revealed scriptures are prepared by the Lord by his incarnation in the body of Śrīla Vyasadeva, just to remind the fallen souls conditioned by material nature about Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Except the personality of Godhead, no other demigod can award freedom from the material bondage. That is the verdict of all the Vedic literatures. Impersonalists who have no information of the personality of Godhead minimize the omnipotency of the personality of Godhead and put him on equal footing with all other living beings. And for this act, such impersonalists do get freedom from the material bondage with great difficulty, because they can only surrender unto him after many, many births. And culture of transcendental knowledge. One may argue that the Vedic activities are based on sacrificial ceremonies. That is true. But all such sacrifices are also meant for realizing the truth about Vasudeva. Another name of Vasudeva is Yajna, and in the Bhagavad Gita it is clearly stated that all sacrifices and all activities are to be conducted for the satisfaction of Yajna or Vishnu, the personality of Godhead. Similarly, the yoga system. Yoga means to get into touch with Supreme Lord. The process, however, includes several bodily features as asana, dhyana, pranayama, meditation, etc. And all of them are meant for concentrating upon the localized aspect of Vasudeva, represented as Paramatma. Paramatma realization is partial realization of Vasudeva. And if one is successful in that attempt, one realizes Vasudeva in full. But by ill luck, most of the yogis are stranded by the powers of mysticism achieved through the process of bodily features. Ill-fated yogis become captivated by the wonderful material powers thus achieved, and again become conditioned by the laws of nature and fall down from the higher status of perfection. These fallen yogis are given chance in the next birth by placing them in the family of good learned Brahmins or in the family of rich mercantile community, just to execute the unfinished task of Vasudeva realization. If such fortunate Brahmin and the son of a rich man properly utilize the chance, they can easily realize Vasudeva by good association of saintly persons. Unfortunately, such preferential persons are captivated again by material wealth and honor and practically forget the aim of his life. So also the culture of knowledge. According to Bhagavad Gita, there are about 18 items in the matter of culturing knowledge. And by such culture of knowledge, one becomes gradually prideless, devoid of vanity, non-violent, forbearing, simple, devoted to the great spiritual masters, controller of the senses. By culture of knowledge, one becomes unattached to heart and home and becomes conscious of the miseries due to death, birth, old age, and diseases. And a sum total of all such culture of knowledge culminates into devotional service of the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. Therefore, Vasudeva is the ultimate aim of culturing all different branches of knowledge. Culture of knowledge leading one to the transcendental plane of meeting Vasudeva is real knowledge. Physical knowledge by its all branches is condemned in the Bhagavad Gita as ajnana, or the opposite number of knowledge. Ultimate aim of physical knowledge is to satisfy the senses, which means prolongation of the term of material existence, and thereby continuing the status of threefold miseries. So prolonging the miserable life of material existence is nescience. But the same physical knowledge leading to the way of spiritual understanding helps in ending the miserable life of physical existence and begins the life of spiritual existence in the plane of Vasudeva. The same is for all kinds of austerities. Tapasya means voluntary acceptance of bodily pains for achieving some higher end of life. Ravana in Hiranyakashipu underwent a severe type of bodily torture, for achieving the end of sense gratification. Sometimes modern politicians undergo severe type of austerities for achieving some political end. They're not actually tapasya. One should accept voluntarily bodily inconvenience for the sake of knowing Vasudeva, because that is the way of real austerities. Otherwise, all other forms of austerities are classified in the group of the modes of passion and ignorance. Passion and ignorance cannot end the miseries of life. Only the mode of goodness can mitigate the threefold miseries of life. Vasudeva and Devaki, the so-called father and mother of Lord Krishna, underwent penances to get Vasudeva as their son. Lord Sri Krishna is the father of all living beings. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 14, text 4. As such, he is the original living being of all other living beings. He is the original eternal enjoyer amongst all other enjoyers. Therefore, nobody can be his begetting father, as it is ill-conceived by the less intelligent class of men. Lord Sri Krishna agreed to become the son of Vasudeva and Devaki, being pleased at their severe type of austerities. Therefore, if any austerities have to be done, it must be done in terms of achieving the end of knowledge of Vasudeva. Vasudeva is the original personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. As explained before, the original personality of Godhead expends himself by innumerable forms. Such expansion of forms are made possible by his various energies. His energies are also multifarious, and as such, his internal energies are superior and external energies are inferior in quality. This is explained in the Bhagavad Gita as the para and apara prakritis. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 4 through 6. So his expansion of various forms, which takes place in terms of the internal energies, are superior forms, whereas the expansions which take place in terms of the external energies are inferior forms. The living entities are also his expansions. The living entities who are expanded by his internal potency are eternally liberated persons, whereas those who are expanded in terms of the material energies are eternally conditioned souls. Therefore, all culture of knowledge, austerities, sacrifice, activities shall be aimed at changing the quality of the influence that is acting upon us. For the present, we are all being controlled by the external energy of the Lord. And just to change the quality of the influence, we must have to endeavor for it by cultivating spiritual energies. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that those who are Mahatmas are those whose mind has been so broadened as to be engaged in the service of Lord Krishna, are under the influence of the internal potency, and the effect is that such broad-minded living beings are constantly engaged in the service of the Lord without any deviation. That should be the aim of life. And that is the verdict of all the Vedic literatures. Nobody should bother himself with fruitive activities or dry speculation of transcendental knowledge. Everyone should at once engage himself in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. One should not also deviate himself in the engagement of worshiping different demigods, working as different hands of the Lord for creation, maintenance, or destruction of the material world. There are innumerable powerful demigods for looking over the external management of the material world. They're all different assisting hands of Lord Vasudeva. Even Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma are included within the list of the demigods. But Lord Vishnu or Vasudeva is always transcendentally situated. Even though he accepts the quality of goodness of the material world, he is still transcendental to all the material modes. The following example will clear that matter more explicitly. In the prison house, there are the prisoners and the managers of the prison house. Both the managers and the prisoners are bound up by the laws of the king. But the king, even though he sometimes comes into the prison, does not mean that the king is also bound up by the laws of the prison house. The king is the creator of the prison house, as well as the officers, and by his order, the prisoners are put in the prison house. The king is therefore always transcendental to the laws of the prison house, as much as the Lord is always transcendental to the laws of the material world. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Bhakti Siddhanta Shishyaya Bhaktivedanta Namine Prasannaya Prashantaya Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Bhagavad Vandanam Khadyam Guru Vandana Purvakam Kshiram Sharkara Yuktam Kadatehi Visheshataham Adadana Strinam Danter Idam Yachi Punaha Punaham Śrīmad Padam Bhojam Dhulishyam Janma Janmani Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Rup Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatam Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunatam Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we are reading two very long purports by His Divine Grace Śrīla Prabhupāda. We have often discussed as part of these meetings that the worship of demigods is unnecessary. We have also seen in the Saturday morning Bhagavad Gita readings in chapter 7, our Lord Krishna explains that kamesteste ritagyanaha prapadyante anya devataha, that those who are impelled by lusty desire, kama, worship other demigods, anya devataha. So this is the reason why various persons engage in the worship of demigods. But this is not necessary, neither is it very productive. It is a waste of time. In the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, there is a Sanskrit text in the 5th canto, Yata taror mula nisanchanena. Just like if one worships the root, if one waters the root of a tree, then automatically all the fruits, the flowers, the leaves, the branches, the twigs, everything is automatically nourished. There is no need of trying to pour water on every branch, every twig, every leaf, every flower. No, that is not necessary. So one has to very intelligently understand this. In Southern California, there was a devotee named Shukavak. Shukavak was a Canadian devotee who became a PhD. He did his thesis on the life and teachings of Bhaktivedanta Thakur, and he wrote an excellent book called Hindu Modernity. A very scholarly devotee, very fixed up devotee. And him and another devotee went to a place in Southern California. And with the help of an Indian community, they started a Hare Krishna temple. It was a typical ISKCON temple with Hare Krishna deities, Gaurnitai, pictures of the Panchatattva, the 6 Goswamis, the disciplic succession. So what happened is basically in that temple, there are numerous Indians who came and supported the temple. And gradually some South Indians came there and they say, well, why are you worshiping only Hare Krishna? We want to worship Ganesh, we want to worship Shiva, we want to worship this demigod, that demigod. So some devotees came there one time and had a discussion with these Indians. Now some of them who were from Vaishnava families, they understood the point that Vaishnavas only worship Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sarva dharman parityaja. This is a well-known instruction in the Bhagavad Gita. Very well-known instruction. And Krishna says, Masuchaha, don't worry, I'll take care of everything. All of your sinful activities, all your problems, Masuchaha, don't worry. But not some group of Indians. Oh no, we need to worship the demigods. No, you don't need to worship the demigods. You want to worship the demigods. Why? Krishna explains, Kameste ritagnyanaha. Because you are bewildered by kama, by the desire for sense enjoyment. Now, it's quite important to note, just yesterday I was listening to a lecture from Śrīla Prabhupāda, where His Divine Grace is basically discussing a verse from the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, where it is described that in any situation in life, any situation, one should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Whether one has no desire, whether one is moksha kama, whether one desires liberation, one has all kinds of material desires, sarva kama, or akama, he has no desire for sense enjoyment. And then, tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. One should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu or Lord Krishna, in all circumstances. Even if someone wants to worship the demigods, simply by worshiping Krishna, all the benefits that one gets from these demigods will be there by the grace of Krishna. Krishna is the one who gives all of these benefits. We see in the Bhagavad Gita in one place, Prabhupada says, Yajñave Vishnu, that the purpose of all sacrifices is to worship Lord Vishnu. Now, if one is not disturbed, if one's intelligence is not disturbed by Maya, he can understand this. But some of our Indian friends in Southern California, they did not understand this. So they insisted, oh, we must have a Ganesh Murti, we must have a Shiva Murti. So this is how everything becomes disturbed, becomes polluted. The proper understanding. We see here that Śrīla Prabhupada is giving the example in this discussion of his father, Nanda Maharaj. In the last purport, last paragraph of text number 27, Śrīla Prabhupada explains, Lord Sri Krishna, when he was personally present at Brajadama, he stopped the worship of Indra, demigod, and advised the residents of Braja to worship their business and to have faith in God. Worshipping the multi-demigods for material gain is practically a perversity of religion. This sort of religious activities have been condemned in the very beginning of the Bhagavatam as Kaitava Dharma. We have seen that this mentality is very prominent in the Indian subcontinent. So many people, they don't think they can worship Krishna alone. Well, one should not worship Krishna alone. One should worship Krishna with his consort Radharani. One should always worship Lord Vishnu, Narayana with Lakshmi. But these people think, oh, no, you have to worship the other gods. Because all the gods are the same. They give this example, Akashat patitam toyam, yata gachati sagaram, that all the rivers that they're going and merging into the ocean. Sarvadeva namaskarha Sri Keshavam pratigachati. That is just like the water is going and merging into the ocean. So if you offer your regards to all the demigods, it all goes to Lord Keshava. But that is not accurate. Madhvacharya in his commentary on Vedanta Sutra has described that the molecules of water still remains individual. They don't merge with the other molecules. They may all assemble in the ocean, but they don't merge. Section of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, Nachatunasam, Natvam Jene Janadipaha, Nacheva Nabhavishyamaha Sarve Vayam Mataparam. That you are individual, all these kings are individual, Arjuna, and you will remain individuals, even in the future. So there is no such thing as merging with Vishnu or Narayana. This is an illusion. So this is quite important. And I realize here that this reading of these purports has taken a considerable amount of time. So what we're going to do here, we're going to turn over the discussion to Vishwakarma Prabhu, and a little later on, we're going to read a portion of a lecture from Śrīla Prabhupada on this text number 28, Vasudeva Paraveda, Vasudeva Paramakaha. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu, for that excellent explanation. In depth, even though brief, in depth understanding of our Krishna conscious philosophy. And thank you for stirring my memory in regards to Shukavak. I completely forgot that he was a member of the Toronto Temple. I had he did go away for study as in philosophy on the west coast of America and ended up, as you described in your talk. And further, I was moved by Prabhupada's purport where he talks about the aim of life, because there's so much confusion in the material world in terms of what is the right thing to do. And especially in spiritual circles, there is so much confusion when you enter into the study of the demigods and the worship of the demigods. And it is by the blessings of Śrīla Prabhupada that he's given us this essence of the teachings of the Vedic literature. And the essence is devotional service to Krishna. So being from the West here, we are not familiar with like your good self, with the extensive understanding of our scriptures. I thought it was very profound what you spoke to me about the other day, where Prabhupada had mentioned to you, why would you go leave India when the people in the West will not understand much about Sanskrit and our philosophy in detail like you do? So he had saw that talent in you, and I think that we as a group are very blessed that somehow or other by Krishna's arrangement, these classes and this arrangement of association with all of the serious people that are interested in Krishna consciousness has come about. This is very profound, and an opportunity for everyone here to take up the mission of Lord Chaitanya in a systematic way. The perfect example is, of course, Jayananda Prabhu, who understood this philosophy in its essence, not with all kinds of flowery information, but simply servant of the servant of Krishna, which was Prabhupada's instruction, as I've told many times, when I first got initiated in Detroit, Michigan, on Jefferson Avenue in 1971 in July. We went down in an old van. It was a humble environment, young people, and very exciting to see Prabhupada. And at the ceremony, they announced my name, who I had no idea what it meant, because we had no books. We had a few books, a copy of the Bhagavatam that we're reading today, which was a shared copy in a house of like 15 people, all very neophyte and not very knowledgeable. So Prabhupada announced my name, Vishvakarma, and it was a big roar in the temple room. Oh, this Prabhu got this Vishvakarma name. I'm going, what does it mean? I couldn't even repeat it. But Prabhupada looked at me, he said, but you should never think that you're the chief engineer, but the servant of the servant of the servant of the chief engineer. And this way you'll become great. So this principle of devotional service, to serve the devotees, to take up the mission in cooperation with other devotees, is the essence of our philosophy. And I constantly realize that in my life, that we're so fortunate, because we discussed yesterday how expansive the material creation is, how very rare it is, as you mentioned to me yesterday in our conversation, Yaśodā Prabhu, how it is so rare to be living in a period of time where Lord Chaitanya actually appeared. Here we are. We're in this Sankirtan Leela, everyone. This is a Leela of the Supreme Lord that we're participating in. I know in some situations we've been discouraged. We've been troubled by so many different factors in terms of our devotional service. But at the same time, Prabhupada said, don't judge how you start the race, but how you finish. So we're all moving ahead in time. I know Puranjana must be in his 70s like myself and you, and other devotees here that are older devotees. So be excited about where you are now, not what has happened in the past. This has led us to this moment, and we have a great opportunity for association. I used to mention this in my other work, that you build something that's great, but don't count on it going on forever, but take advantage of it while you're there, because you never know what will happen to you and to the people that you're involved with. So at this particular moment in time, we've got all this opportunity. So everyone in this group, please take advantage of it and carry on with this mission together in cooperation to serve Lord Chaitanya. And thank you, Yaśodā, for your discussion and your reminder about Shukavak. I very much appreciate it. You have a marvelous memory. Any further comments, Prabhu?
Well, it's interesting that Shukavak, after that incident in that one temple,
Yes.
ended up going to Fullerton, California, a few miles down the road, where another group of Indians set him up in a temple, a beautiful temple with Krishna deities, and this time it was exclusively Krishna worship. I went to visit him several years back when I was in Southern California, and he had engaged a pundit to read. It's called Akhanda Ramayana Parayana. They recite the entire Ramayana in Sanskrit, and everybody comes and they have a beautiful picture of Lord Sitaram with Hanuman, Lakshman, and everybody comes and offers some flowers, some fruit. So all day people were coming with baskets of fruit, paying obeisances, worshiping Lord Ram. And it was a very, very ingenious arrangement, a very beautiful ceremony. And when I was there were several people waiting in line to basically offer donations and wanting to ask him questions. He's quite a remarkable scholar. And he has what's called microfiche of all the Matsya project, the entire project that was started after the departure of Śrīla Prabhupāda, where some devotees went all over India to collect Bengali and Sanskrit manuscript from different mats, different temples, different ashrams, different universities, different schools. There are hundreds of thousands of manuscripts which are lying in India in these libraries, and they collected all that, and he has all of that in a special room, and he can read. He's very fluent in Sanskrit or Bengali, just like most people on this call can read and speak English proficiently. Shukavak can speak Sanskrit, recite Sanskrit, read Sanskrit. He's a great Sanskrit scholar. And we had some very interesting discussion about the teachings of Bhaktivedanta Thakur. If anybody ever seen his book, it is quite an amazing. He got his PhD on the basis of that thesis called Hindu Modernity, the Teachings and Life of Bhaktivedanta Thakur. It is very detailed and very, very nice. But he did a wonderful job when he went to the other temple. He's a great devotee. I wanted to read something that has been posted right there. I know
Yes.
that we've not yet come to the discussion portion, but this is quite significant. This is from Nityananda Das to everyone. It says, Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda. Śrīla Prabhupāda said, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 4. Sri Bilvamangal Thakur said that if one has unalloyed devotion for the Supreme Lord, the goddess of liberation is ready to serve him, to say nothing of the... Oh, disappeared. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
To say... Nope, I lost the comment here.
Vinkat, could you keep reading it for us, please?
To say nothing of the gods of material opulences. Indeed, all the demigods are simply waiting for an opportunity to serve the devotee. Thus, there is no need for a devotee of Krishna to endeavor for material opulence or liberation. By being situated in the transcendental position of devotional service, he receives all the benefits of Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. This is from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 24, Text 27. It's a very wonderful, appropriate quote for what we are discussing about the position of worshiping the demigods and worshiping Krishna. Quite unique. I just wanted to say yesterday I had a very interesting conversation after the class with Puranjan Prabhu, and we were discussing many of the issues that many devotees in this movement are being confronted with, especially with many ongoing developments on a regular basis. And we were discussing a quote from Śrīla Prabhupāda, where Śrīla Prabhupāda said that you can cheat some people some of the time, but you cannot cheat all the people all the time. Or you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you cannot fool all the people all of the time. And this is quite significant because we have answers. There are clear answers for all the questions. Śrīla Prabhupada has often said, all the answers are given in my books. If you have any questions, all the questions are given in my books. Yesterday, somebody sent me a video of a devotee in Jaipur. I don't know exactly who is his name. Very nice shaven head, beautiful tilak, very well spoken. He was speaking in Hindi and English, explaining who was authorized anybody to do ritvik ceremonies or ritvik initiation. And he was systematically explaining Prabhupada's arrangement. And at one point, he quoted from the fourth canto of the Bhagavatam, incidentally, the same fourth canto that we just read, about the meaning of disciplic succession, that one has to be authorized by his predecessor spiritual master. When one devotee translated that purport from the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam into the Bengali language, he purposely avoided translating the word authorized, because that is very significant, because that is the point that we are presenting, that Śrīla Prabhupada never specifically directly authorized and gave any order for any disciple to be a Diksha Guru or initiating spiritual master. This came about by all kinds of speculative interpretations. Prabhupada gave a clear order of how he wanted initiations to be conducted, all the different points of the Krishna consciousness movement, deity worship, book distribution, how to take care of devotees, Varnashram Gurukul, so many instructions were there. And for the process of initiation, Prabhupada also gave specific direction. That was disobeyed, and that is the root cause of all the problems that we are seeing. I'll leave it there and let some other devotees make comments.
Okay, we're going to go forward here. Vinkat Prabhu, could you read Bala Ganesh's question for Yaśodā?
Okay.
Thank you.
Śrīla Prabhupada says like this in 1:19:18 purport, but we understood from Govardhan pastime, Indra seems offended with not being able to perform his worship. A demigod takes pleasure in seeing someone go back to Godhead. He is always pleased with the devotee of the Lord, so much so that by his adhidaivik powers, he may help the devotees in all respects, and by their actions, the Lord is pleased with them. So that's what it says in Canto 1, Chapter 19, verse 18. But then why is Indra offended? That was the question, I think.
There's a place in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, I'm paraphrasing here, where Śrīla Prabhupada explained there is an unseen cooperation between the personality of Godhead, the demigods, and all great personalities in the universe to help a pure devotee. Again, as I said, I'm not quoting exactly here, but I'm paraphrasing. In other words, Kṛṣṇa will always help a pure devotee. A pure devotee is especially empowered to do things that regular, common, conditioned souls cannot do. What Śrīla Prabhupada did was absolutely unprecedented. When you consider his old age, those of us who are past 70 years old, we know, we experience what is it to be in old age. Śrīla Prabhupada went to America in old age, no financial support, practically no help, no place to live. Just yesterday, we saw a picture of a devotee that basically was on this call, May Madhukanta from Nevada, And he had a picture behind him of Śrīla Prabhupada sitting on a subway in New York with his cane, with an old warm coat. Now, Śrīla Prabhupada did tremendous austerities. And it's obvious that Prabhupada was very empowered. Very empowered. Even ordinary persons could understand that. There's been testimony of so many devotees that have said that when they first saw Prabhupada, when he first looked at them, when he first engaged with them, that they felt the presence of Śrīla Prabhupada was very, very powerful. Very powerful. Because it's like in the Bhagavatam, there is a reason where it says, Sarva Devamayo Guruhu, that the Acharya, the empowered Acharya, is the sum total of all the demigods. Even the demigods cannot accomplish what a fully realized pure devotee, what a fully empowered pure devotee can do. The demigods will help. They will help a pure devotee in numerous ways. Śrīla Prabhupada never struggled for wealth. But when he came to America, gradually Krishna sent him so many devotees, so much wealth, so much assistance. So all of this is arranged by the personality of Godhead Krishna. It's very important. It's very important in this point that he is always pleased with a devotee of the Lord, so much so that by his adidaivic powers he may help the devotees in all respect. And by their action, the Lord is pleased with them. So this is quite significant because we see that some people who don't have the strong faith in Krishna, they're trying to water every leaf, every branch, every twig, every flower, thinking that this is going to help nourish the tree. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. If a king wants to give a benediction to somebody, you don't need to go around trying to get benedictions from every minister and every assistant. The king is willing to give you half of his kingdom. Why not take shelter of him? Please him. So worshiping Krishna like that, one can get everything. One can, all the benefits. So this is very important point. Devotees have to be fixed on this point. Because we know it is a great offense and a great blasphemy. One becomes a pashandi, a blasphemer, if he equates the demigods and Lord Vishnu. Yastu Narayanam Devam Brahma Rudradi Devate Samatvena Viksheta. If one thinks that they are the same, Samatvena, Sapashandi Bhavedruvam, one certainly, the word Dhruvam in Sanskrit means certainly becomes a Pashandi, a great blasphemer and offender. One should not become like that. Very important point. Hare Krishna.
Excellent. Excellent. Vinkat, and I want to thank Nityananda Prabhu in Vrindavan for his questions that he's writing to us for discussion in the class. Very well done, Prabhu. Thank you. Vinkat Prabhu, could you please read the next question from Nityananda Das in Vrindavan for Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu?
Okay. Please, can you clarify this verse, Śrīla Prabhupada's purport in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam in relation of demigod worship versus devotee worship? Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 1. The Lord declares very emphatically that worship of his devotee is more valuable than the worship of the Lord himself. That's Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 1:9-25, translation and purport. So the question is, are some demigods not devotees of Lord Krishna?
Yes, they are devotees, there's no doubt. They are devotees, but they're motivated devotees. Demigods enjoy a very high standard of material enjoyment, very long duration of life, a very, very special, beautiful environment that is very unique in the universe. It is a very special position. In this planet, we are not on the planet of the demigods. Places like Indraloka, Chandraloka, Suryaloka, all these demigods, there's 33 million demigods. They have great power. Just like in the Bhagavatam, it is described that these demigods, they're endowed with full mystic powers. All the Astashiddhis, the 8 mystic powers, they can travel from one planet to another. I was discussing the other day with Vishwakarma Prabhu, and when the Bhagavatam was spoken, this is quite significant. When Maharaj Parikshit sat down on the bank of the Yamuna, and when Shukadev Goswami arrived, this was a big time event. You know, sometimes when there's a big political event or sporting event, they call it prime time. This is like very special. Everybody, there's big propaganda. Everybody should attend this. What it is, and when they have this football, the Super Bowl or Super Bowl, yeah. Everybody, watch the Super Bowl. Well, this was like the Super Bowl of all events in the universe, because all great demigods, the Sapta Rishis from the higher planets, Vyasadeva, Narada, Asita, Devala, Atri, Bhrigu Muni, all these great rishis came down from their places in the higher planets to come and watch this event that was going to take place. They knew this was going to be very, very special. The Bhagavatam was going to be recited by Shukadev Goswami. So even the demigods, they're very powerful. They're in higher planets. They have a very special position. When a great power, pure devotee like Shukadev Goswami came, they realized this is a very special person. Let us go in here. That's why I keep repeating this point. This Bhagavatam reading, this is not just a show. This is not a theatrical show that we're trying to put on. We're hearing the Bhagavatam, the holy message, and the purports of the empowered pure devotee, the Shakti Vishavatar, the chosen ambassador of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was deputed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to come all over the world and spread the message of Lord Chaitanya. So this is a fact that worship of a pure devotee like Śrīla Prabhupada is very, very valuable. How do we worship Prabhupada now? Well, we can offer Sri Guru Charana Padma, Kevala Bhakti Sadma with fruits and flowers. That is nice. But we can also worship it by submissive oral reception, the original message, the non-adulterated, unedited message. And that is the greatest benefit. That is the greatest boon that one can get. Here, Prabhu Nityananda declares, the Lord declares very emphatically that worship of his devotee is more valuable than a worship of Lord himself. And the question is raised, are some demigods not devotees of Lord Krishna? They're all devotees of Krishna. All of them. They all worship Krishna. They all accept Krishna. But they have a certain function. Their function is to assist Lord Vishnu in the management of the universe, the air, the light, the water, the wind, everything. Some foolish people, they think, oh, why is God punishing us? There's earthquake, there's famine, there is war, there is a flood, oh, there is intense heat. Well, there are persons behind that, and there are reasons why these things take place. It doesn't take place by chance. Prabhupada often gives the example that a child may sometimes think that the car just runs by itself. He doesn't understand there has to be a driver behind it. Similarly, the affairs of the universe, the demigods, the devotees of Krishna, they're managers, they're agents of the Supreme Lord to engage in the service of the Lord. They manage the universal affairs. So like that, that's why they're very powerful. People like Vayu, Indra, Krishna, Chandra, nothing happens by chance. I remember one time we were in Delhi, and 2 journalists from Russia came to see Śrīla Prabhupada in 1974. And they kept asking Śrīla Prabhupada, who are your disciples in Russia? Where do they live? What do they do? And Prabhupada, he says, I got thousands of disciples. I don't know where they all live. What is this? And then Prabhupada kept preaching to them. And Prabhupada brought the point, there's a controller. There is always a controller that's in charge of everything. But the problem is that people become like animals. In this modern age, people become like animals. They neglect to follow the Supreme Controller. And Prabhupada says, the dog is running on 4 legs and you're running on 4 wheels. What is the difference? Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Same business. Prabhupada said you have to raise your consciousness to serve the Supreme Controller. So this is the point. The demigods are devotees of Krishna, but Krishna always is the Supreme Controller. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna Das Kaviraj very nicely summarizes this in a very small Bengali verse. Ekal Ishwar Krishna. Krishna is the Ishwara, the controller. Ar Sabritya. All others are his servant, including the demigods. Hare Krishna.
What a wonderful science Krishna consciousness is, and to be able to discuss it in association with other eager participants in understanding who we are and what the purpose of life is very ecstatic and blissful for those that are attending. And I hope that all of you who have come today to this Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam class have enjoyed the discussion that has developed in the association of other devotees. We're going to move to the next section of the class, which will be open discussion of the philosophy and different questions and answers that people have in terms of their own personal experiences and their experiences in this journey in time that we're going through. This is just a small speck in the movement of time in this material world. But before we do that, we're going to end the class with a kirtan from the 60s. And I've mentioned this before, Yaśodā, how the devotees were still learning how to play the cartels, but it didn't make a difference using a bongo. So it's not about a musical expertise, although Prabhupada was an absolute expert musician, but it is the sincerity of purpose of the individuals in the kirtan that makes the difference. So please enjoy the chanting of Hare Krishna from the 60s recording that Śrīla Prabhupāda did. And if you want to stay on with us and participate in a further discussion on various matters that you have on your mind, then please take the liberty of staying with us. All glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda and the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam.
Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaurabhakta Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaurabhakta Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaurabhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna. Glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda, glories to the Sankirtan movement. So we're moving into the second section of our Sunday morning Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam reading and discussion. And this is an opportunity for people to speak out and have any questions that are on their mind, because there is confusion. This is a Kali Yuga environment, which is very dangerous. Padam vipadam natesham, very dangerous. Like right now, in the material society that we're living, we're on with this escalation of conflict in Europe between Russia and Ukraine and NATO. The Cold War is becoming a hot war. And if you're aware of the situation, the Russian government is threatening nuclear retaliation. So although people live in the bubble of comfort, material comfort in their own mind, the circumstances surrounding their existence could easily crumble at any moment because of this friction between this government and that government. And this is, Prabhupada mentions this in the Bhagavad Gita in the divine and demoniac natures, that at any moment there could be a nuclear war, and everything that we see as normal could become disturbed. And that's why it's so important that we stay focused individually in this process of devotional service together, and stay steady in our sadhana. This is key. I was listening to a talk recently, Yaśodā, and a person was talking about success. He was saying there are three most important things: attitude, motivation, and commitment. So in this way, we have this particular situation. Venkat Prabhu, is there any people that you see are coming forward with any questions further, or anyone else have any comments they wanted to bring forward to this discussion this morning?
Hare Krishna, dear devotees.
Nityananda.
So I always have questions.
Good.
I
Questions
give
and
everybody
answers.
Yeah, I always like
That's fine.
give everybody an opportunity, but I always have questions.
That's fine.
So today's questions, I got a list here. Let's just see. So regarding this editions, okay, so we'll go on to book edits. So Prabhupada's BBT, when it first started off, when Śrīla Prabhupada created the BBT versus today's BBT. I know even the logo has been changed. And now we see that there is something that's called the BBTI. And I've also seen, which has been revealed by Spiritual Location, where they have a document of Śrīla Prabhupada as signed off as an hired writer of the BBT, that ISKCON, the GBC of ISKCON has hired Śrīla Prabhupada as a writer to write the books. Therefore, they have the authority to change and edit Śrīla Prabhupada's books as they see fit. So I just want to find out from the disciples of Śrīla Prabhupada how I know Śrīla Prabhupada is very strict upon this. I've seen Śrīla Prabhupada's lectures, or I read his books, I've seen his videos, how Śrīla Prabhupada speaks, but I just want to get the point of view from the devotees, from the disciples of Śrīla Prabhupada.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
Go ahead. So the point is this, that this changing of the books is one of the key platforms that we're taking with the Prabhupada Disciples Association, which is not to change Prabhupada's books as per his instructions. And this is something that unfortunately has become part of his movement, the ISKCON movement, the change of the books. In fact, even in Alachua, Florida, we have one godbrother, Rupanuga Prabhu, who went to the temple there to speak. He's a senior devotee, and he wanted to use the original unedited Bhagavad Gita, and he was forbidden to do so because of the new programs that the GBC have introduced into Prabhupada's mission. And this is, of course, a great tragedy for our work. So I'd like Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu to further comment for you on some of the historical facts regarding this change of books and why it came into play and how we hope to correct it. Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu.
Well, thank you. This is a very important question. In other words, how did the BBT ended up with the BBTI, or the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust International? They also have another corporation called the Bhaktivedanta Book Publishing. What happened is that after Prabhupada's manifested presence, there was a lawsuit against the society. It was called the Robin George case. And the lawyers for that plaintiff were trying to get the assets of ISKCON in various ways. So what happened is some individuals had the misguided idea that we'll separate the assets of the BBT and put the assets of the BBT into a separate non-profit corporation called the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust International. Well, it's really not a trust. It's a corporation. It's like two different legal entities. But they did that allegedly to protect the copyrights of Prabhupada's books. Now, what happened during the lawsuit against Hamsadutta in Singapore, Hamsadutta had published some books in Singapore in the early 1990s, and ISKCON sued him in Singapore. What happened is the judge in the Singapore litigation raised the issue with the ISKCON lawyers. What is the provenance of your copyright? Provenance is a legal term. What is the source of your copyright? How did you get this copyright? They could not explain it. So what they did is they took Hamsadutta to court in California under the plea that he was an unfit director, because Hamsadutta had been appointed by Śrīla Prabhupāda as a BBT trustee for life. They took him to litigation in the California Superior Court in Los Angeles County. Basically, that went on for a couple of years, the end result of which was basically the judge in the litigation gathered all the parties together, and at one point he made a statement to the various attorneys, the various lawyers for the parties, that based on all the evidence that has been presented here, that has been presented before me, I think it would be in your best interest if you reach a settlement rather than take this to trial, because I may not be inclined to rule for the plaintiffs, for the GBC, BBT, ISKCON party. So they came up with a solution, a so-called solution, where they would allow Hamsadutta to print the pre-1978 works of Śrīla Prabhupada. So that's how there is an organization that was called KBI, or Krishna Books, Inc. I heard that there was subsequent litigation in India where the family of Śrīla Prabhupada sued the BBT in India, that you have no right, because of a law that exists in India, that the relatives of a deceased author are entitled to the profits of his writings. So they sued the BBT and basically claimed that that the BBT had no right to give a license to anybody to print Prabhupada's book. So it's a very, very, how would I say, confused area at this point. I don't have all the legal documents of the most recent litigation. But the point is that Śrīla Prabhupada did not want his books to be perpetually edited and changed. And this came up in a conversation on June 22nd, 1977, called the Rascal Editor's Conversation. It's in the Prabhupada Conversation book, where we were reading from a Bhagavatam version, and Prabhupada said, why has this been changed? And as part of that conversation, Śrīla Prabhupada said at one point, they cannot change anything. When Prabhupada found out that his first edition original books had been changed, he wanted the books to revert back to the original first edition. He said the next printing again should be the original way. Now I'm quite aware of all the various interpretations, and people said they were reading from this version, that version. I'm explaining on the basic fundamental principles that His Divine Grace Śrīla Prabhupada did not want his books to be changed. My personal experience after that conversation, when everybody dispersed, I happened to be sitting in Prabhupada's room in his house at the Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan, and Prabhupada took his paperweight. As you know, in India, they have these fans, these ceiling fans, because it gets a little warm. So Prabhupada took his paperweight and slammed it on the desk, and I was startled. And Prabhupada pointed his finger at me and says, you there, you. He says, you go tell this GBC, if they change one word of what I've written, it will spoil everything I've done. He says, get out and write a letter. And I was so startled, I couldn't even move. Prabhupada says, get out, go write a letter, get out. So I got out, wrote a letter to Satvarup, showed it to the secretary, the late secretary. I never really received an answer. But the bottom line is Prabhupada did not want his first edition original books to be changed. Now, the argument that people give, well, there's sometimes mistake, there's sometimes spelling mistakes, there's sometimes some capitalization mistakes. Well, there are not that many. Because what has happened, this has become a cottage industry that people are taking it, oh, Prabhupada said to correct the spelling mistakes. Okay, now the floodgates are open. And then everything, the end result is that so many things are being changed, like what they did to the Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, the Bhagavad Gita has like 4,000 or 5,000 changes between the 1972 original Macmillan edition and the subsequent adulterated 1983 edition, all under the plea of, well, we have to correct some spelling mistakes. This was a lot different than just a few spelling mistakes. So that is one of the problems that we're facing. As far as all of the legal issues with the BBT, the BPTI, the BTP, what you're referring to is a document that was filed in the United States Copyright Office, where they were trying to file the Bhagavad Gita, the revised Bhagavad Gita. I believe that's the 1983 Jayadvaita edition. They were trying to file that in the United States Copyright Office, and what they did is claim that Śrīla Prabhupada was a worker for hire. That's a technical legal definition of an individual who is hired by a corporation to write a text or adapt a text. Now, that was not a very brilliant idea, because it's a public insult against Śrīla Prabhupada to declare him a worker for the ISKCON Corporation. But that shows you the mindset of some of these individuals and the disrespect that they had for Śrīla Prabhupada to even dare to have the temerity and the gall to file that in a public office. And many devotees who have seen this do not agree with this nonsense idea of calling Śrīla Prabhupada a worker for hire. I hope it helps to clarify a couple things.
Yes, thank you.
Nityananda, further, go ahead. Another question.
Yes,
from you.
so
Please.
That was interesting regarding that. The Bhagavad Gita, apparently, it's about 60. It was changed about 16 times So my understanding of why they changed it so many times, it's like if they make big changes and take out whole sentences and words from it, people will notice, devotees will notice. But if they change one word, one comma, every time they do these changes and make these new additions to it, nobody will actually recognize, because this is my understanding, is that they've done this so to put themselves in the position of a guru, of a Diksha guru. That's the whole precedence of what I have understood by reading by glancing and reading over the edited editions as well, by giving them themselves the position of holding the charya, of holding a position of the actual guru. Okay, so I mean, the thing is, I was speaking to Venkat Prabhu today. There is some talks of us trying to establish Śrīla Prabhupāda's original books for worldwide distribution. Hopefully that's with Śrīla Prabhupāda's blessings and the disciples of Śrīla Prabhupāda's blessings, that will be successful.
Yes.
Let's see what happens with that. The next question is regarding...
Let me respond to that quickly. It's very true what you just said. And it was interesting for me personally to experience the change, specifically in 434 of the Bhagavad Gita, which of all the changes in the Bhagavad Gita was the most profound, where they said, you in order to get transcendental knowledge, you should tadvidhi pranipatena, that particular verse, you should approach a spiritual master. Now, I didn't at the time. Back in the early 70s, we learned render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. This was the specific way that we memorized that verse when we first became devotees. All of a sudden, the new translation became because they have seen the truth. There's a big difference between he and they. So the they is to justify the elected guru system that they introduced into the society in order to pacify ambitious people that were trying to take that role for profit, adoration, and distinction. It's a business. Prabhupada talks about it extensively in regards to his experiences with the Gaudiya Math, because this didn't really exist until Prabhupada's demise, his leaving the mortal plane from his pastimes. It only happened after, but the same thing that went on in the Gaudiya Math has now gone on in ISKCON, that his movement, which is that people are assuming this role of Diksha Guru for specific personal motives. And I could, having a lot of experience, many of us in business, of tens of millions of dollars of business that we have conducted, you get an understanding that outside of ISKCON, but then moving back into ISKCON, you realize how big the business of a guru can be. For example, in my experience running large music events, I learned about sponsorship and donations that come in from people. And I found out that people would donate $1 million. Say if you have $100 million, if you decide to give $1 million to somebody, it wouldn't affect your personal situation. So in this case, we've seen, for example, that in Russia, Bhaktivedanta Swami was given a donation of $1 million from one person, a disciple of his. big business. I have a personal friend in Philadelphia who gave $200,000 to Bhaktivedanta for whatever he was doing. So the point that I'm making is that you can accumulate a lot of money when you're in the charitable business like the Catholic Church.
Yes.
One of the richest organizations in the world. Why? Because people give money in the hope that they'll save their souls at the time of death by this donation to the church for philanthropic or humanitarian activity. So in the same way, in the ISKCON movement, the people in the guru business have accumulated millions of dollars in their bank accounts. In fact, one of the leaders in their group who's been suspended from the GBC operation because he's been exposed as collecting money as a sannyasi in a private bank account and then dispersing it at high interest rates to other people that are in need of money within their organization. This demonstrates how deviant this whole thing has become. And you're in Vrindavan, you can see this.
Yes.
This is real. This
It's
is
very
not
serious.
It's a serious.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
understand it to be as like it started from my understanding. It all started when the TKG wanted to take over Sri Krishna John Swami's Radha Damodar Bhajan Kirtan party. I think that's when that idea of this books was, like a cash cow for them. I don't know if you want to explain a little bit more. I mean, I'm very interested in Krishna John Swami and his Radha Damodar Bhajan Kirtan party. I don't know if any of the Prabhupada disciples have had association with him that they could explain.
I'll just comment and then I'll pass it over to Yaśodā Prabhu.
Thank you.
The Tamal Krishna episode was a tragedy for a lot of people. And in this particular association, we get to learn about people's character. In other words, say for instance, you have a person prior to joining Krishna Consciousness who's already got a character by his birth. That's what we understand. That your character comes, we try to change our character by association with, in our case, with Prabhupada as the pure devotee. And through his instructions, following the regulated principles and chanting, etc., that we're all aware of, we hopefully will have a change in character. But in some cases, the character isn't changed and it maintains itself and it emerges probably due to weak performance of the discipline of devotional service, where you don't really chant, you don't really surrender, you're not really renounced, you're still maintained, like in the case of TKJ, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
This particular person, and we've met people subsequently that work with him that are very bitter towards him because they stayed in his association after Prabhupada's demise up till 1997, for example, in one instance, continuing to serve. And then they all of a sudden realized what the motive of this person was.
Yeah.
And me and you can discuss that later privately, the people that I'm referring to, but these are prominent people that were operating in the movement under his jurisdiction, and his character had not changed. So this is what's happened, is that this guru business, whether it's Sadguru or it's someone in ISKCON, or now with this proliferation of these brahmacharis and people within our movement, or Prabhupada's movement, let's say, who are coming out pukka, dressed in a pukka manner. They're speaking, and I heard someone speaking yesterday, Yaśodā, and he was a perfect duplicate of Sadguru. It was remarkable. And he's a ISKCON member.
Yeah.
He's an ISKCON representative.
They
He's
do
got
motivational speeches now. That's what they do.
Yeah, so instead of following in the footsteps of Śrīla Prabhupada, instead of repeating his philosophy, instead of repeating his examples, and instead of trying to emulate him as a representative of Śrīla Prabhupada, they invent themselves. Oh, look at how smart I am. This is such a petty way to look at our philosophy. Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu, please, if you could comment on this.
I just wanted to comment on the incident in 1976 at
Yes.
Mayapur. This was in February, March of 1976, where there had been some complaints by various temple presidents in North America with regards to the activities of the late secretary, Mr. TKG, where he would go into the temples and he would want to take away any of the best collectors, distributors, book distributors, preachers, to bring into his party. And what happened as part of that process, he was basically trying to kick out the various temple presidents and the various devotees, the women and the children. So at Mayapur, it came to a head that he was trying to make a policy of driving away all of the householders, the women and children out of the movement. And naturally, there was quite a bit of an outcry, but many of these devotees, they were doing a lot of substantial work for the mission. They were managing temples, managing Sankirtan, engaging people in deity worship, expanding the mission, distributing books. They were doing a lot of work. Whereas Tamal's party would come in, trying to take men away, and it would create unnecessary friction and discord with the devotees. So the point is, when Prabhupada heard about this, he stopped all of these resolutions that the GBC was doing and the late secretary was trying to pass. And there was an incident in Prabhupada's room where Prabhupada told him that you should go to China. And TKG refused. He says, no, I'm not going to China. And I heard the story from people who were there directly at that, where Trivikram Swami says, oh, I'll go to China, Prabhupada. And Tamal says, I'm not going to go with you. And then Guru Kripa put an elbow in Tamal's ribs and says, you better remember who you're talking to here. This is Prabhupada here. If Prabhupada tells you to do something, you do it. So, but then Prabhupada later on made a comment to another devotee named Shukadev. Why has this man started a fratricidal war amongst my disciples? These women and children have as much right to live in my temples as all of you. You cannot kick them out. So Prabhupada was not very pleased with the blatant personal manifestation of personal ambition at that time. And what happened is that a few months later, in January of 1977 in Bombay, specifically on the 7th, Prabhupada gave a lecture. He says, from now on, no more sannyas in ISKCON. And the reason I'm making this point here, Prabhupada was aiming a society that was going to be a varnashram-based society, not an elitist saffron elite society. Prabhupada did not want that. And this is confirmed when in August of 1977, I was in Vrindavan, and the same secretary was there. And Prabhupada called us in a room and says, I've written my books. That is 50% of my work. The next 50% is the introduction of this varnashram system, self-sufficient farms where everybody can be engaged. If you take me to Gita Nagari, I will show you how to do this. Unfortunately, Śrīla Prabhupada's health declined and he was not able to go there. But that was Prabhupada's master plan for the future of his mission, not this nonsense so-called self-appointed guru system. This is directly related to your question about the book changes. He has seen the truth and they have seen the truth is two different philosophies. Prabhupada saw the mistake and the chaos that ensued in the Gaudiya Math, in the post-1937 Gaudiya Math. Why would he introduce the same system in his society? And I've seen it read all thousands of pages, hundreds of thousands of pages and discussions of arguments about so-called tradition, so-called living guru, but nobody has been able to prove in the last 46 years when specifically Prabhupada appointed, nominated, or selected, or chose any one of these living successors. It was not there because Prabhupada wanted a system of officiating representative, Varnashram-based society, not this elitist voting system that they have and this self-appointed system. It's called LGEP, Living Guru Experimental Project. That's what it has become, with so many concoctions, so many deviations. So I hope it helps. And I'm sure Puranjan is here on this call.
Yes, Puranjan Prabhu, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Puranjan Prabhu, I think there's a mic button. Yeah, you can speak now, Prabhu. Please,
I don't know if he can. I'm not sure he can. He could be turned off. He could be turned off. But I wanted to ask Bhaktivedanta Singh if he could step into the conversation and give us some of his understandings, because he joined the mission in 1985, I believe, Ron, and has some quite extensive experience with the evolution of the movement after Prabhupada's demise. Bhaktivedanta, how are you in Sacramento?
Hare Krishna, Prabhus. Praises of humble obeisances. All glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda. Prabhus, yeah, so Krishna Consciousness movement, Śrīla Prabhupada, as everyone knows here, he came in 1965 and then registered the movement in New York in 1966. And he had a mission and vision, which is there in the archives. And then as the movement progressed, there were many temples that came from 66 all the way till 77. So there was various directives that Śrīla Prabhupada wanted his society to follow. So 1966, incorporation of ISKCON, opening of temples from 66 to 77. And basically he empowered the new devotees or the senior devotees to teach by example and guidance. He personally guided them how to start temples. And then he had various documents that he wanted his society to follow, like the direction of management, which came in 1970 when the movement was growing rapidly. So he had a systematic process of how he wanted the movement to go on. And it's all very clearly put. And various senior devotees signed it in 1970. And it gives clear responsibility of the men who were senior devotees and who were GBC. So he used the word GBC, Governing Body Commission, and he gave directives or instructions on what is their responsibility. Their responsibility was to help assist the temple presidents in opening temples, buying properties, things in that nature. And then he established the BBT. The ISKCON Press was there in 69. And then he established the BBT, Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, in 1972. And he also gave specific direction on the BBT. The original BBT is supposed to be a separate entity than International Society for Krishna Consciousness, means that they're not anyway connected. And Śrīla Prabhupada was himself directly managing the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust with, initially it was Karandara Prabhu and then Bali Mardan and Śrīla Prabhupada himself. When Karandara left, Śrīla Prabhupada appointed Hamsadura Prabhu as a lifetime trustee of the BBT. So this is basically how the movement kind of went on. The senior devotees were empowered to open temples, help the junior devotees, and temples were opened. And basically, when everything came down to it, in 1977, Śrīla Prabhupada wrote that topmost urgency letter where he was foreseeing that, these devotees are not doing what he's asking them to do. He basically said they should file all these documents at the local level, that everyone knows about these documents, that, okay, this is how the movement should be, should function and to run. But this was never done. The topmost urgency letter was belittled or not implemented. So this is just a historical understanding of how the movement started and where it is now. So when they never, the rank and file devotees, they never knew about these documents till just, maybe in the 90s or something. Till then, they had already hijacked the whole society. These 11 and the subsequent gurus came. So many changes have occurred. The creation of the illegal BBT, the non-authorized BBTI, sorry, it's called BBTI. So in my opinion, it was a calculated move by these 11 to hijack the assets and then to destroy Prabhupada's movement.
Exactly. That's very true. We all have, or some of us have, personal experience dealing with them. You may know that I was blessed to be the chairman of the Temple Presidents Association globally in Mayapur, voted in by my peers at the time, for whatever reason, and 78 and 79. And also in North America here, we conducted meetings to try to stabilize the mission centered around temple presidents and not around GBC members who were very politically motivated at the time. Rather pathetic situation and very discouraging for us. But I see that our friend Paranjana is still with us, I hope.
He's going to be back. Prabhu, he said that he's just busy. He's going to be back, but he will give his
okay, we're going to be kind of moving. Yeah, if he comes back. Well, Vincott had unmiked his connection, or unmuted it, I should say, to give him a chance.
Okay. Well, I can go ask the next question. It's also in regard to what Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu says as well. It was one of my other questions, but since it's in relation. Okay, so regarding the Devi Vanasha Dharma situation, what really was Śrīla Prabhupada's stance on this? And why didn't the disciples of Śrīla Prabhupada follow this most important instructions? Or was it up to the future generation to establish the Devi Vanasha Dharma system? Because I know that he started with the New Vrindavan.
Yes.
I think that was the first. So we wanted that to be the example, like a headquarters for other Vanasha Dharmas to come up. So if you can give some clarity on that specifically.
Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu, please.
Well, it's a very important point. I mean, whether or not the current administration really, they did not put emphasis on the establishment of Varnashram to the society after Prabhupada's departure. Their emphasis was setting up their own zonal empires and setting up their concocted self-appointed guru system. So the resources of the society went to that. I mean, we know for a fact that many of Prabhupada's instructions were not discussed, were kept hidden, were not mentioned to a lot of the devotees. Let me give an example. In October of 1977, in late September, Prabhupada came back from London, England. And he gave an instruction to the late secretary that he wanted all of his disciples to come see him in Vrindavan. That instruction was suppressed. It was never relayed to the devotees. The devotees were never told that Prabhupada wanted all of them to come and see Śrīla Prabhupada on his departure bed. They suppressed that instruction. Same thing with Prabhupada's will. That was not available for almost 10 years. The so-called appointment conversation was never brought up at Mayapur for discussion in 1978. It was not till many, many years later that the entire transcript, the non-adulterated, non-edited transcript, was made available. So in other words, there was definitely some nonsense that was going on among some members of the leadership. I'm not going to make accusations here. I'm just speaking on facts. That many instructions were not mentioned to the devotees, were not divulged to the devotees. Very important instruction of Śrīla Prabhupada. And the reason is because these people had their own motivation. They had their own personal Acharya ambition. Profit, adoration, and distinction. That has always been the problem, the biggest enemy of any devotee. Any Vaishnava has to guard against this. Raghunath Das Goswami has written a writing called Manashiksha. It was commented upon by Bhaktivedanta Thakur, in which he speaks about the great danger of this pratishta problem, this desire for name, fame, power, position, prestige, control, all of these materialistic, nonsensical tendencies of Vaishnavas to stay away from that. But as it was mentioned earlier in discussion, some people, these things were lurking behind. They wanted that position. They wanted that power. They wanted to be Prabhupada. There was a police officer in Berkeley, California, that made a statement that there was Prabhupada, and then there were those who thought that they were Prabhupada, which is a very accurate description of what happened. Actually, if Puranjan is still on this call, maybe he can comment on that, because he's got a lot of experience about the development, the post-1977 development of that whole system. Puranjan, are you still there?
I think he's not, he's gone.
He's not there? Okay, no problem. So basically, that's what happened. And that's why there was so much confusion on this particular point after Prabhupada departed. The false narrative, the concoction, the speculation that Prabhupada had appointed 11 acharyas is simply nonsense. No one has been ever able to prove that. They can't prove it. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Here in the East Coast of Canada and the US, and we're going to bring our discussion to a conclusion and remind everyone that we will be meeting again on Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. I think it might be a conducive time for you, Prabhu Nityananda. We certainly enjoy your questions. That would be 8 a.m. in the morning approximately in Vrindavan.
Yeah, the ones in Wednesday, I won't be able to make that. That's 5 a.m. Yeah. So
Okay,
that's
that's
my
fine.
sadhana time. But on the weekends, I can make it like Saturdays and Sundays. I can try my best. This is the time
And
that's
at your
available.
convenience. And
Thank
by
you.
the way, our classes are recorded, and you can share that information online so other people can participate in these discussions and get some information about Krishna consciousness in our classes, and then further information about the questions that you are astutely and other people here on this call are bringing up, to give everyone an understanding of what the Prabhupada Disciples Association is about. We're preserving the philosophy and mission of Śrīla Prabhupada the way he taught us, without adulteration. So all glories to Śrīla Prabhupada, all glories to the assembled devotees of the Prabhupada Disciples Association, and we look forward to everyone participating with us on Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll continue with the study of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you on Wednesday. Haribol.